We're running about 1 or 2 minutes late, but I think a lot of people are flowing over from the packed, solid Andreas Antonopoulos speech. What a great speech. So we're here to talk about Bitcoin investing. And it's not just investing in Bitcoins. We assume that most of you here are either doing that or are considering that. How many people in the room already have at least a Satoshi worth of Bitcoin? Raise your hand. You realize, somebody pointed out to me the other day that if you have 10 Bitcoin, you're a Satoshi billionaire. So, and we'll see how many years it is until Satoshi can buy you a cup of coffee. So we're here to talk about not investing in Bitcoins per se, but investing in Bitcoin companies. I'm Michael Terpin. I'm co-founder with David Johnston, who's also on the panel here, of the Bit Angels, a 9.5-month-old organization that now has 350 angel investors from around the world. We've done 12 or 13 deals so far out of 200 companies that have approached us, and we are always looking for great new internet and Bitcoin cryptocurrency startups, from idea phase to sort of like early ramp up, and our long-term goal is to be a solution for every stage of the Bitcoin infrastructure, from seed funding, idea stage funding, to potentially Bitcoin 2.0 IPO. So I also run a PR firm called Transform PR and a social media sister company called Social Radius, and we work with a number of Bitcoin-related companies for PR, including KNC Miner and Kraken and Gift. And I got into Bitcoin last year in May, so that makes me a late bloomer according to most in the Bitcoin community, but wacky early according to most of the world. So still a lot of room to grow in this industry. And I have a great panel here of experienced investors and experts in this space. I'll let them all tell a little bit about themselves, and sort of with the introduction, I'll have them say what your investment thesis for the year is, and then I'm going to start asking a few questions.
Great, thanks, Michael. Matt Roszak. I've been in the venture capital business for the last 18 years. Initially started with Keystone Capital and then Advent International, and for the last 11 years been running my own venture capital firm. We've invested in about 25 tech companies, deployed about $100 million in areas such as cloud computing, public safety, social gaming, and I got into Bitcoin about a month after Michael, which makes me more lucky than smart at that time. But certainly over the last 6 months, I've tried to become more smart on the space. So in terms of investment thesis, on how we typically approach Bitcoin broadly defined, both lowercase b, Bitcoin the currency, and capital case b, the railroad, the infrastructure, we continue to accumulate Bitcoin every day. We have a long-term vision for Bitcoin, and we think it's will go up several-fold. So about 2/3 of our dollar is in Bitcoin, the currency. About 1/3 is into the ecosystem. I think it's very important to also have a complementary investment thesis where you're investing in the ecosystem. And today, that's bridges, roads, tunnels, the on-ramps, off-ramps of Bitcoin, which is very needed these days. There's a lot of friction in Bitcoin still today. Outside of people, the people outside of this room still have a difficult time understanding Bitcoin, so the education piece, the on-ramp piece, etc., to get that adoption. If that goes well, that has a kind of a full circle effect on the price of Bitcoin. So the more adoption will drive the price. So from a deployment of capital standpoint, that's how we typically spend our time, energy, and money. In the shadows, we're spending time learning and getting into what I would say the 2.0 technologies, which are things like Mastercoin, open transactions, Ethereum. David's obviously a key component of the Mastercoin effort, and if you don't know much about that, it's something that I would definitely suggest studying. That's the kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 year model. So,
very good. Hey everybody. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm David Johnston. I co-founded BitAngels last year with Michael. Helps a lot of times to clarify that there are two different organizations. So the BitAngels network is the group of individual investors. And as Michael mentioned, we invested around $7 million last year into 11, 12 different companies. And that's all individual investors looking at those deals. We had about 200 people apply and come through the process, and they make individual investments. So if you have a Bitcoin startup, if you want to look at Bitcoin startups for potentially investing in them, I encourage you to reach out to Sam Yilmaz. He's now the executive director of the BitAngels, whereas I'm spending my full-time effort now on a separate entity. We use the same branding as the BitAngels Fund. And so the fund invests as a pool into only decentralized applications. And so similar to Matt was talking about sort of these Bitcoin 2.0 companies, they're not just accepting Bitcoin, they don't just have Bitcoin as part of their process, they're actually adopting the Bitcoin model. And so for 2014, my thesis is that we can use the Bitcoin model to decentralize all sorts of things that aren't payment networks and that aren't currencies. So we're sponsoring the hackathon next door, and I hope some of you will come at 4 o'clock to see all the presentations. And everybody in that room is, for the most part, adopting this Bitcoin model of having an open source project. So it's not a company, right? There are no employees, there are no shares, it's not incorporated. It's an open source project. It has a token to monetize the use of that application, right? You have to have Bitcoins to send across the Bitcoin network. It uses a consensus mechanism. So for example, in Bitcoin, it's a proof of work to determine the state of the consensus, and it also uses a Bitcoin blockchain to distribute all of its records globally. So there's no central point of failure. That's a really incredible model that I think has been largely successful for the it's really been largely responsible for the success of Bitcoin, is the fact that you have this completely transparent, completely open source model that incentivizes all the people that contribute to it and use it. And so that's really the companies I'm excited about. I'll just give you one example. There are 3 or 4 great teams right now working to decentralize storage of data. So one of the teams in there, storage, is actually rewarding people with storage tokens for adding their hard drive space to the cloud. And that's really incredible. They're talking about disrupting Dropbox to the point of an order of magnitude less cost. Right? Because if you look at hardware costs, you look at power costs, it's a fraction of what they're charging, and we have all this unused storage space just sitting around. So like what Matt said, that's the infrastructure level stuff we're at right now. Data, compute, mesh networks, you know, those are the things that really get me excited. So if you want to talk about decentralized applications, love to talk about that, and that's what the BitAngels Fund is focused on. So we've raised about $15 million this year to invest in those type of projects.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Eddy Travia. I'm French. I've been living in China now for 9 years. I moved to Shanghai back in 2004. I was working on investment, private equity in investing in China, which was booming and at the same time a difficult market to be as a foreign investor. A very high learning curve as well. So in a way, I'm a little bit used to the fast pace of the Bitcoin world. You know, in China at the time, you didn't want to miss a deal by a few months either. So I guess after that I worked for different funds, some of which I've created, and investing in Asia and emerging markets. And recently one of the partners now in Sitcoin, who's based in London, Hakim Mamoni, introduced me to Bitcoin. At first I was skeptical, like maybe some of you before, and then I realized what a great adventure it could be if we could join Bitcoin and the VC or the startup environment. My feeling when I learned about Bitcoin is that they could be a great wave of entrepreneurship, and that's hopefully that's what I was I was looking for, and I guess that's what's happening right now. I think there is a great wave of entrepreneurship. I think it's going to grow even more, and we are very excited to be part of it. Our whole model is we raise fund in Bitcoin and we invest Bitcoin. So in that sense, we're trying to be a full Bitcoin ecosystem company. We're not holding really Bitcoin as a speculative way. We are just a channel. When Bitcoin comes in, it comes out. We invest it as soon as we can. The only thing that stops us from investing very quickly is that we still need to do legal work, before. But still, all our term sheets are in Bitcoin. We pay our lawyer in Bitcoin, and we try to pay everything we can in Bitcoin. It's kind of an experiment. At the same time, it's fun, I guess, and it's also a way for us to remove any fluctuation risk in that field. So we're investing in 8 companies. We have closed the deals on about 4 of them. Yeah, 4 of them closing one this week in Austin, and moving to close another one in Mexico in a week's time. So basically, we are a virtual incubator. Sitcoin is a virtual incubator whereby we can invest in any company around the world. We're investing in Latin America, we're investing in Asia, we're investing in Europe, we're investing in Australia, and we're trying to really invest in people and find the best talent we can out there. And our deal is usually about 200 to 300 Bitcoin for each startup.
Hi everyone, my name is Tuur Demeester. I'm economist. I'm author of a financial newsletter. I had a newsletter in the Dutch language. Now I have a successor for that, so somebody else is writing that. Working on the launch of an English language investment newsletter. Been into Bitcoin since 2011. I was the 3rd investor in Cointerra. Interestingly enough, by the way, the first 3 investors are all Belgian. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but it's kind of an interesting thing that occurred to me a while ago. My approach is, well, my background is in Austrian economics. I co-founded the Murray Rothbard Institute, also in Belgium, translated books, focused a lot on Austrian business cycle theory, trying to understand where economic crises come from, and also then try to look back in history, what happens when there is a downturn, what happens when there's a depression, when there's defaults, what does that mean for the investor, and how do you, position yourself. And I don't feel like I know a lot of things about investing. I really like the Isaiah Berlin fable of the hedgehog and the fox that has many cunning strategies to get to his prey. But then on the other hand, there's the hedgehog who just has one very simple strategy, and that's to crawl up in a ball whenever there's a threat. And so that's kind of how I feel about my approach to investing. The big thing that I think I do know is our money is kind of broken and it's not going to get better. And in the economy, in any advanced economy, you need liquid instruments, preferably with low third-party risks. And that's why I like Bitcoin so much. And that's why I'm really hard on myself selling my Bitcoins for something else. It really has to have a lot of added value. So, also in the Bitcoin space, I really try to figure out for myself. Maybe I'm too hard on myself. I don't know, we'll see. So my thesis for 2014 is the wheels might fly off this year, it might be next year, but some wheels somewhere in the world are going to fly off. In certain countries, capital controls are going to be on the rise. We'll see more bail-ins, so more Cyprus-like situations, and that's going to be wind in the sails for Bitcoin. So my investment answer to that is just hard currency, gold, silver, Bitcoin. Very simple, actually, and we'll see whether that works or not.
Hi, Adam Wyatt. I'm the COO and lead analyst for Digital Currency Research, the publisher of the Bitcoin Bull Bear. Hopefully some of you have heard of it. We're a financial newsletter as well, and I'm a market-specific specialist. I focus on market analytics and the specifics of market dynamics. As far as our company, we accept Bitcoin as payment, and we like to hold on Bitcoins. We try to use them operationally as much as we can. And so on that side, on an operational and a philosophical standpoint, we're pro-Bitcoin. However, from an analytical standpoint, we're completely market agnostic, and we cover many other markets as well. Specifically about the topic, investing in Bitcoin companies, I think that the case of Mt. Gox illustrates how important management teams are. Now, ideas are a good thing, but those ideas have to be executed by people. And so finding people that you trust and you believe in executing the idea, I think, is something that we need to look harder at as a community and something to keep in mind while investing in companies.
Very good.
So because we have a large panel and a short period of time, I'm not going to have everyone answer every question. I'm going to have it sort of be like the lightning round on Kramer. So whoever has the best answer first will answer, and then if anybody else in the panel feels strongly, they can sort of chime in. So I'll start with Roger Ver, who's sort of the earliest known and one of the most prolific angel investors. He was actually at our initial meeting of Bit Angels. He is a Bit Angel. And he's been in back of, like, blockchain, a number of other top success stories. He made a bet for anybody who would take it about 2.5 years ago, and he said, I am going to bet anybody who will have this bet 1,000 Bitcoins that Bitcoin will outperform the stock market, gold, and silver by 100x in the next 24 months. Nobody took that bet. And he lost it. It took 26 months for it to beat all three. And he decided, because he did technically lose it, that he would pay someone off, and he paid 1,000 Bitcoins, which was $1 million at that point, to, I think it was the Electronic Freedom Foundation. So, yeah, so. Yeah. FEE, yeah. Yep. Obviously, one of the reasons why some people say they're going to buy Bitcoins but not invest in Bitcoin companies is that whole Mt. Gox management issue. What is the best reason, other than trying to sort of like have a surety that the infrastructure will move forward, that you'd be investing in companies versus just Bitcoin itself?
So if I can give Brock Pierce's answer, if he were here, Brock would say that if you're an experienced investor and that you know what you're doing and you're holding Bitcoin, you have a moral obligation to go and invest in the infrastructure that actually is going to make it happen. And so similar to what Matt described earlier, he said 2/3 of their holdings is in Bitcoin and they put 1/3 into the companies. Similarly, I try to take 50% of what I hold in Bitcoin and invest the other 50% back into the ecosystem. And that's how I think it should be. This is only going to work if we reinvest into the ecosystem. And I'm not suggesting this if you're a novice, but if you're an experienced investor, you really ought to be building the infrastructure. And we still have, this isn't charity, this is one of the underlying things for Bit Angels, is we evaluate, will this project outperform Bitcoin? And that's a really hard bar. Even if you make some general assumption like 10x in 12 or 24 months, that's a really high bar. And that's why we found 12 projects out of 200. It's 5% of those that apply. And so it's not, I'm not talking about charity, but we ought to be reinvesting in the infrastructure when it makes sense and building out things. And there are a few cases where you can outperform Bitcoin if you get in early enough into an investment. And Mastercoin ended up being one of those, outperformed it by 5 or 10x because of how low the valuation was when the project first started. And so, yeah, I would say you have to.
So I would also, that's sort of a segue into this whole Bitcoin 2.0 era, where I would say, besides just the decentralized applications and protocols, there are also some instances where new altcoins can get very rapid 10x, 50x, 100x returns, but there have been other ones that have failed. So when you're looking at, say, a new system, whether it's an altcoin or a protocol, what do you look for to make sure that it's not just a pump and dump like a small cap stock? Anybody?
Yeah, I think I might take that. I think what Dogecoin taught me, at least, is that community is so important. I mean, you can think you're the expert and you figured out like this specific algorithm. Well, it's still that this is going to do it and it's going to offer a lot of value, but eventually it's going to be the market deciding that. And the enthusiasm, I mean, the more enthusiasm there is around a certain currency, that creates a community, and that in itself can allow funds to flow in. There's more money around, and then you can hire developers to actually, do what the other so-called more sophisticated currency maybe was aimed at. So that's just something, one takeaway for me, that I try not to be pretentious and think that I know it all. I mean, I'm happy to follow where the community leads, but of course it's nice to be early as well. If you have some really smart people in an altcoin team, I think that's interesting to look at, especially if they're focused on the infrastructure, building out the Bitcoin infrastructure, and that's why I'm interested in projects like Ethereum and the likes.
As far as altcoins, I think it's important that, with a lot of talk about pre-mining, that whatever the coin is, that they're transparent. That you can go in and make sure that you can inspect the code and you know the specifics of how the coin operates, and there's no shadiness with the development team, just as a note.
I think alt currencies are very tribal as well. There's going to be currencies for geographies, currencies for industries. So think of Venezuela coin. Think of
quick comment on Aurora coin, because that's the first one that really took off, with sort of saying, if you're from Iceland, we're going to give you free Aurora coin.
No, it's a great example, and you think of agriculture, and then you think of affinity. I mean, will there be our Kardashian coin? You know, that's it's all very possible. Kanye West had it wrong, but that's where there's 193 currencies out there today, fiat currencies. There will be hundreds of cryptocurrencies out there. I think that's the evolution of where this will go. I think it'll all back end into Bitcoin, but there will certainly be, again, a community in distinct industries, geographies, and affinities.
Can I make a quick point there? I think Aurora Coin is a really interesting project. I don't think it's a perfect technical implementation, but it's really interesting because I see it as the first purely proof of adoption coin. Meaning they're rewarding people because they proved, in this case with their Icelandic ID, that they are a person, they're adding themselves to the network, they're downloading this wallet. We've had proxies for that before. That's the same view I have of Litecoin and Dogecoin, is you're rewarding people for joining this network, which has value in itself, right? The network effect is really powerful, and every node that's added adds to the value of the network. But we've been using proof of work, and they've been using scripting to prevent ASICs from sort of corrupting that system. But now that ASICs are coming out for scripting, that's breaking down. And so people are looking for new ways to do proof of adoption. I think it'll be really interesting when somebody comes out with a global proof of adoption coin that rewards people for proving they downloaded a crypto wallet onto a certain device. And there's now technology with trusted computing to actually do that with the private keys in your chipset that comes shipped with Intel chips. And so that's really interesting. I don't think it'll be long before we see that, but I agree. It's sort of an on-road into Bitcoin, and that's how I view it.
I'm going to ask one last question on altcoins, because obviously, even though that is a big area, there are other areas to invest in. So you mentioned affinity, because there's a lot of folks also who are looking at, sort of using affinity type of technologies as Bitcoin 2.0, like how to have the next set of like airline miles and things like that. But do you see that at some point there could be sort of a Ivy League coin? If you went to an Ivy League, you all of a sudden get issued one of those coins, or an AARP coin.
Or think about an Olympic coin. A lot of these Olympians, their value as an Olympian sometimes is a 3-week period. And maybe they earn Olympic coins based on a public voting system of, that was an awesome move, that was a great jump, that was a great race. And there's ways to keep a micro community like that to have their own cryptocurrency.
Maybe their medals are going to be turned into hardware wallets, who knows?
I think actually the Human Project is working on that.
Yeah.
So my last question before we turn it over, your wish list for technologies that either don't exist or haven't really been proven that will exist by the end of 2014. Mine would have to start with a fully compliant exchange, not just a broker trading exchange, in the U.S. and a couple of other nations, so that it's just drop dead easy to buy Bitcoins. And number two, some kind of piece of plastic where you can put Bitcoin in and fiat out without going through tons of hoops. Your wish lists.
I would say ditto. I think every investor, everybody in this room on their whiteboard says build a robust, safe, trustworthy exchange. There's a big demand for that. And there's no question that there's going to be another couple dozen exchanges coming out. I think the ease of use, I used to scoff at ATMs and some of these on-ramps. I think ATMs are going to be one of the most important on-ramps in Bitcoin over the near term, because that's the least off-putting way of getting Bitcoin versus even on Coinbase, which is arguably one of the most easy ways to get Bitcoin today. Still, you need your bank account information, your credit card information, all that other stuff. So to the untrained eye, that might not be comfortable. So ATMs, getting those out, getting those points of presence stamped out, I think is very, very important. And hopefully there'll be hundreds of those available. And then that acts as a critical step in the staircase on adoption.
So most of my dreams for 2014 are coming true right now because we put up $1 million for the hackathon, and we got some incredible teams that flew in from all around the world, from Israel, from Berlin, guys that won their own hackathons, and their reward was to come to our hackathon. And so it's really an international group over there. But again, I'll go back to the infrastructure. I think in 2014, what we're going to see is the entire technical stack, the first decentralized version of that technology come out. In that room, we have decentralized storage. We have some of the world's leading Tor experts in that room doing an incentivized and distributed Tor browser. We're talking, yeah, that is incredibly important. That's incredibly important. That's for a lot of reasons. So data, compute, browsing. We're working with the folks from Open Garden. For those that are familiar with mesh networks, they are in 1 million devices right now that let you share internet, and we're working with them to provide a token so you can incentivize people to share their internet, and we can replace ISPs. I mean, this is really incredible stuff. And so I really encourage you to keep an eye on those. They're going to be doing Kickstarter efforts in the coming months as they get out their prototypes and white papers, and I really hope the community gets behind them because that's exciting stuff.
Well, as an incubator, we receive about 2 to 3 applications per day from startups from all over the world. So we can see a trend towards different exciting technologies coming up. One of these trends, which I believe is quite interesting, is are the solutions for the unbanked. We are planning to invest in one company in Africa, in Eastern Africa, to help people there accept remittances or transfer money with their mobile phones. We are investing right now in a company based in Hong Kong with some Australian engineers, helping people use any mobile, including non-smartphone mobiles, to have a very secure Bitcoin wallet. So I guess this whole unbanked population or underbanked population, both in Latin America or Africa, for example, or obviously as well in Asia, is a very interesting market, and I hope we'll see more and more technologies that help these people transfer money, transfer Bitcoin or altcoins, and be part of the growth of the global economy.
For the near future, I always keep looking at this graph where you can see the interest rates over a 1,000-year period, and right now it's the lowest it's ever been in 1,000 years. So at some point, these interest rates have to start rising again. And I think what we'll see happen then is credit markets will dry up, and we'll see amazing opportunities in Bitcoin-based or cryptocurrency-based credit markets, insurance markets, and that also, of course, segues into crowdfunding, crowd lending, all those kind of things. And that's going to be really exciting, I think, for everybody to be involved in, and also it's going to be a great boon for society in the long run, even though a spike in interest rate really hurts in the short run, because you move from an economy that creates bubbles all the time because of this artificial credit that's being pumped out by banks that it's not priorly safe capital, towards an economy where saving is rewarded and where the capital that comes into the market, into companies and into building things, comes from people that have earned it and people that have shown that they know how to handle capital intelligently, and that means we're going to have durable growth, and it's going to be a great boon. It's going to allow for a lot more prosperity to exist than what is possible today.
So for me, I know as a Bitcoin investor, you want to see the price appreciate, and the way that's going to happen is through adoption. And so the things I'm most excited about are our point-of-sale solutions and security solutions for storing your Bitcoins. For example, when the Bitcoin ATM opened up here at Handlebar, we went over there. I wanted to buy some Bitcoins and then take my Bitcoins and then go buy some tacos at a taco stand that accepts Bitcoin. Well, I didn't have any iPhone apps on my phone, so I had to print out a paper wallet, and I have that paper wallet. Now I want to go spend those Bitcoins at that taco stand. Well, there's some friction there, and so maybe companies like CoinKite and other, hopefully, developers in the incubator, in the hackathon, can come up with ways to solve problems like that people are going to encounter in the real world when they're trying to use Bitcoin. And then conversely, if they would just want to store their Bitcoins and not spend them, we need to make that extremely easy to do and extremely secure. So hardware wallets is something else I'm really excited about.
Fantastic. So we could spend another hour just me asking the questions, but we got about 10 minutes to ask questions for the audience.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stand right here if anyone wants to come up and ask. And I want to announce that they're going to do the hackathon winner at 4 o'clock, right?
The presentation started at 4 o'clock.
The presentation started at 4, okay.
Anybody's welcome to come and join them.
Okay,
the awards at 6, I think.
Yeah, the awards.
Okay, so vote with your feet on this. Go ahead with your question.
Thanks. My name is Christoph Atlas. Thanks for the very interesting talk. So my thing is I'm really interested in cryptocurrency privacy. And so I heard some talk about security of Bitcoin, but I'm curious, have you seen investment or developments in the areas of privacy for Bitcoin? Because right now the current state of Bitcoin is that privacy is a bit weak. It needs some improvements, but there's kind of some political slowness behind pushing this stuff into Bitcoin. So I'm curious what you've heard in this space and what you see in the future.
There are a couple of technologies you can check out. I recommend ZeroCoin if you're looking for an alternative that is really privacy focused. If you're looking for Bitcoin, I believe Blockchain just made an announcement recently about an integration using stealth addresses to help improve privacy. You can talk to the blockchain guys about that. But yeah, there's 2 or 3 new proposals in Bitcoin to increase privacy, stealth addresses, CoinJoin and other things like that to improve it. So I think it'll improve in Bitcoin over time. That'll take some time, but there's also alts entirely focused on that.
Hi, yes. I have 2 questions. One that's pretty quick. Is there anything you're not investing in this ecosystem? Like, are you not investing in hardware? Are you not investing in exchanges? Are you not, is there something like that that you're completely avoiding, and why, if so?
I have a really pithy response. If you're building a Dropbox and you're going to accept Bitcoin, I'm not interested. I have no interest. Don't talk to me. So the reason is, when Dropbox does start taking Bitcoin, your competitive advantage disappears tomorrow. What's interesting is if you're actually using the Bitcoin model and you have something that Dropbox can't compete with, which is this decentralization and cutting out all the middlemen. That's a lot more interesting.
I just want to see if anybody else had to answer.
Well, when we started, there is one sector in which we didn't invest, which is mining. One of the reasons is the way we raise funds. We realized that a lot of mining companies had capital available because they could raise fund in Bitcoin and quickly distribute dividends in Bitcoin because they were actually mining it, right? So part of our education in that process is we were telling the investors we're not investing in mining. Basically, we're investing in startups that are working in the infrastructure, exchanges, wallets, and for example, mobile technology. But we have to explain to them this is not mining, and you're going to receive dividends much later because these startups have to build their product, their services, their market first. So that's one sector that we have on purpose avoided from the inception of Sitcoin.
Maybe something that I'm careful about if it's a company that is very geographically focused and has a lot of regulatory risk in general. I'm much more excited or interested in companies that have maybe global appeal and that work purely in Bitcoin. I think that's an exciting place to be because you're very flexible that way.
I think one of the dynamics I really look for or avoid if it's not well articulated is a particular company's wallet strategy. So you'll see a lot of business models that'll be transaction oriented, whether it's an ATM, a credit card that backs into a Bitcoin wallet, and they don't have a really profound wallet strategy, meaning they'll think about the transactions, but they won't think about that relationship on the front end. So while they're saying, hey, look at all these transaction fees, in year 3, they'll look back over their shoulder and say, I should have built that relationship and offered my own wallet. Because over time, I think the wallet business is going to be very important. I think my wallet is my bank, David's wallet's his bank, and pretty soon that's where ground zero is going to be in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then building the concentric circles around that wallet, whether it's peer-to-peer lending or creating a virtual ATM out of that wallet and all the things that those wallets can do. So that's really important to me, that people think through building that relationship versus just the transactions.
Another thing I would add about especially investing in the miners is that a lot of the problems that mining companies have had is that they rely on all these third parties to produce the product that they're going to sell. So their business model is completely reliant on a third party delivering that product that they can then sell. And so I would just be, again, wary about companies that the crux of the business relies on somebody else delivering. Everything can be internalized, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
eliminating third-party risk, yeah.
Exactly.
1 minute. There's no. We got one person.
Okay.
Just 1 minute.
Sure. A quick one. Will any of you be voting with your wallets and investing in the upcoming Ethereum IPO? Any thoughts on Ethereum in general?
So I've been following the project since the beginning, talking with Vitalik before the project had a name. So I'll be writing my analysis. I've written the analysis for Mastercoin project, BitShares project for the BitAngels group, and so I'll be releasing that a few days before they officially kick off their fundraising. They're still finalizing some of the aspects of how they're doing the fundraising. I think technically it's a very ambitious and interesting proposal. I think it will take time to implement. It'll take time to kick the tires and get the bugs out, but it's extremely interesting. I'll participate more if the funding is structured in a way that makes sense, and I'll participate less if it's not as attractive. So it'll really depend on the final terms that they offer. But I'm going to write up a detailed analysis. If you guys are part of the BitAngels group, feel free to just log onto the Google group. I'll post it there. And you can check it out.
I agree with what David said. I'm very excited about Ethereum. I think the guys behind it are fantastic, and they're pointed in the right direction. And I would just echo what David said. I think some of the structuring and the way in which they go to market will be important to hear.
Great, thanks.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yep, absolutely.